Dr. O. Your Excellency, Mr. Liketoft, President of the General Assembly, Dr. Haesung Lee, Chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we have made historic progress today, taking the next step to move from the aspirations of COP21 to action on the ground. The Paris Agreement provides the policy certainty and clear direction requested by the private sector, civil society, and local leaders. Now we must take climate action to the next level. By acting on climate, we advance the Sustainable Development Goals and the 2030 Agenda. National, state, and provincial governments, cities, the private sector, investors, and the public at large, all are crucial to tackling the serious dangers posed by climate change. Mayors from thousands of cities are reducing emissions and bolstering their efforts for disaster risk reduction. Civil society is mobilizing as never before. Companies are inventing green technologies and scaling up use of renewable energy. Investors are starting to shift capital away from fossil fuel investment. We need their support. Far more than $100 billion, indeed trillions of dollars, is needed to realize a global clean energy economy. Sustainable energy sources must be rapidly scaled up to meet the pent-up demand for modern energy in the developing world. My Sustainable Energy for All initiative is working with many of you to do just this. Delivering on the Paris Agreement requires countries to implement their national climate plans and to increase their ambitions over time. I assure you, the United Nations will do its utmost to support member states to meet these goals. In Lima and Paris, the action agenda highlighted the role of climate partnerships in accelerating actions. This afternoon, we'll focus on accelerating action and partnership in 3 action areas to stay well below a temperature of 2 degrees, to energize implementation, and to pursue climate-proof development. South-South cooperation is crucial across the board. Last night, my office, together with the UN Office for South-South Cooperation, launched the Southern Climate Partnership Incubator. It will accelerate efforts to create and finance a climate partnership among developing countries in support of Sustainable Development Goals. This incubator will focus on renewable energy, smart cities, big data, and climate resilience. I encourage you to learn more and participate. Today is about learning from each other so we can be more effective, avoid duplication, and quickly increase the speed, scale, and scope of climate partnerships. I encourage each of you to be frank and constructive. We have no time to waste and so much to gain in furthering action on climate change. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. I now turn the floor to the President of the General Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen. So many good words and optimistic visions have been spoken these last couple of days, and I guess you heard most of it. But let me say just briefly, the business case for moving towards low-carbon, climate-resilient future is extremely convincing.
Okay, perfect.
The moral and political case for ending poverty, reducing inequality, and fostering more peaceful and just societies is equally compelling. The issues we seek to address with both the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement are totally intertwined. Climate is included as goal in the SDGs, and it is in many ways the most urgent one, because if we don't stop climate from warming up the globe, it will take hundreds of millions of people to be in forced migration in a couple of decades. It will create new, much more threatening conflicts that we have seen up till now, and we are not able to cope with in an ordinary good way, in a decent way right now. So if we don't do this, if we didn't do this, there would be no resources for eradicating poverty, hunger, create education and health services, all the rest of it, which is in the Sustainable Development Goals. During yesterday's meeting, I arranged on the overall implementation of Sustainable Development Goals and climate. I heard many examples of the interconnectivity between the different goals and of results that we can create if we align their implementation. A wave of initiatives have already demonstrated that the shift to low-carbon, climate-resilient economies is not only possible, it's already happening. The 23rd Agreement and Paris Agreement, however, demand deeper and much broader change than we have experienced during the Millennium Development Goals. We had yesterday very productive conversations and very visionary ideas about the need to leverage the immense experience, capacity, finance, and knowledge that exists in both the stakeholder communities of sustainable development and climate. We know that we need all actors to sing from the same hymn, from the same hymn sheet, and that we need to remove any bureaucratic barriers that might prevent us from moving forward as rapidly as it is actually necessary. National governments and other actors need to align their plans and programs with the combined commitments made in New York and Paris. In a framework of international coordination, regulators need to create national regulatory frameworks that will make investment in low-carbon development the most obvious and the best investment also for the private sector. The UN system needs to support member states in doing all this. Global follow-up forums need to both feed off and support each other. And finally, the UN needs to strengthen its own capacity to bring policymakers and experts from non-traditional areas together. Indeed, one idea emerging from yesterday's high-level thematic debate is to establish some form of advisory committee whereby experts from the private finance ecosystem could assist member states and UN systems to get the maximum private investment, especially from capital markets, flowing in support of the SDGs and climate. Ideas on how to make the implementation of both climate and SDGs as mutually reinforcing as possible. But, ladies and gentlemen, one thing is clear for sure. We go from here, from these meetings in New York, even more committed and more determined than ever before. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Nikotov, and for your leadership in bringing the implementation of SDGs to the forefront and showing that climate action and the implementation of the SDGs are one and the same. Thank you. We will now turn to Dr. Ho-Sung Lee, the chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Dr. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Orr. Your Excellency, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, UN Secretary General, Your Excellency, Mr. Mogins Lekatov, President of the UN General Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the invitation. I would like to tell you what the IPCC is doing to support the Paris Agreement and review with you the underlying science. The Paris Agreement, as you know very well, aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to limit global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius, with the effort to limit it to 1.5 degrees. I'm very pleased to inform you that last week, the IPCC accepted the invitation of COP21 to produce a special report on the impacts of global warming 1.5 degrees and related emissions pathways. This report will be delivered in 2 years, time for the first UN-FCCC dialogue on progress limiting emissions. We have already started work on this report. Also last week, the IPCC mapped out a work plan to deliver its next comprehensive assessment that will be completed in good time for the first global stocktake in 2023. We will produce 2 additional special reports, first on climate change and various land use.
I don't hear you very well because the voice of the speaker is very loud in my earphone.
State the methodologies that countries will use to report their emissions and removals. There is always more to learn about our changing climate. Areas of uncertainty remain. For instance, the role of clouds and the magnitude of the expected rise in sea level. There are many gaps in our knowledge of climate change at the regional and also local levels. In our next assessment report, the IPCC will need to focus attention on the solutions to climate change as the world starts to implement the Paris Agreement. This slide from the IPCC's last report shows that. No slide? Right. This slide. Different categories of risk increase with temperature, with some risks emerging at moderate to high level at 1.5 to 2 degrees. And it shows the almost linear relationship between cumulative emissions and the rise in temperatures, effectively imposing a carbon budget on us. Whether the target is 1.5 or 2 degrees, net emissions will eventually need to fall to 0, and emissions will have to fall sharply as soon as possible. It is hard to overstate how quickly this peaking of emissions must take place. To keep the rise to 1.5 degrees, the world may need to rely on negative emission technologies, and we must assess the implications of that too. Most scenarios consistent with the rise in temperature of 2 degrees by the end of this century assume emissions will peak in the 2020s. We are, so to speak, burning through our reserves of time. Even with the pledges already made, emissions level in the next 15 years do not fall within the 2-degree scenarios. Much greater reduction efforts will be required. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, science shows us that we have set ourselves a tremendous challenge, but a challenge we can address. The IPCC is working to provide policymakers with the information they need on the emissions pathways, impacts, and policy options so that you can take the decisions you need to build a resilient, sustainable, and prosperous world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee, for your remarks and for your leadership as the IPCC moves from ringing the alarm bell to helping us to integrate science into the implementation phase of this landmark agreement. Now we move from science to technology. We're going to see, if I could ask you to look to the screen, we are going to try to establish a live video link to the Solar Impulse plane and the pilot, Bertrand Piccard, who will have a discussion with the Secretary General. Could we establish the link, please? Yep. We are going to see if our technology can, in fact, establish the link to the Solar Impulse while it is mid-flight.
I have the sound from New York in the cockpit of Solar Impulse. I don't know if you hear me.
Hello, hello, Solar Pulse. Hello, Captain Piccard. Where are you now flying? Can you hear me?
Good afternoon,
yes.
Mr. Secretary General. Yes, Mr. Secretary General, I hear you, Excellencies. Yes, I speak to you from the cockpit of Solar Impulse in the middle of the Pacific, flying on solar power, only, no fuel. I took off yesterday from Hawaii. I'm now flying and landing tomorrow evening in San Francisco. So it can seem to be the future, it's science fiction, but not, it's the reality. It's today what clean technologies can achieve impossible things like flying day and night with no fuel on a solar airplane.
That's wonderful. Thank you for joining us on this historic day. You look like an asteroid in the moon. You look great.
You know, Mr. Secretary General, yes, what you are doing today in New York, signing the Paris Climate Agreement, is more than protecting the environment. It is the launch of the clean technology revolution. And this revolution is going to replace the old polluting devices, polluting and inefficient like combustion engines, incandescent light bulbs, badly insulated houses, old grids of distribution of electricity. All this is going to disappear. This is causing the CO2. This is causing the pollution. And today, what is fantastic is that we have profitable solutions, not expensive problems, profitable solutions, like the one on this airplane. Electrical motors that are 97% efficient, insulation foams for houses to make them independent from the grid. All this airplane is like a smart grid, collecting energy, distributing energy with very, very high efficiency. And this is exactly what the world needs. This is a huge market. It creates jobs. It makes profit. It makes a clean increase in GDP and economical development because it's the market of the future. And the one who understands it will at the same time be successful in their industry and at the same time protect the environment and fight climate change. This is the hope that we need to have today, to have the action today. And Switzerland, by the way, you know, I salute my friend, Vice President of Switzerland, Doris Leuthard. She understood that and she's pushing very hard in Switzerland. But there is so much resistance everywhere. So be pioneers, be adventurers, be explorers of the solutions of today. This is how we can make a better world. Don't let the resistance take over, because we have the solutions. And if an airplane can come, like Solar Impulse, can fly day and night without fuel, the world, of course, can be much cleaner.
I am inspired by your spirit of pioneering spirit. And while you are making history, we have also made the history today. More than 175 countries signed the climate change agreement. And I'm thank you for your leadership and inspiration. We wish you a smooth flight, and you are leading us all to an exciting new era. We are here with Her Excellency Vice President of Switzerland, Doris Leuthard, and she may say something to us. And I thank you very much. All the best to you. Bon voyage.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General, and congratulations for what you are doing. The world will remember it. You are a pioneer also.
Well, good afternoon, Bertrand. It is a honor for Switzerland that we have you as a pioneer, and the entire world is looking at you and your fantastic project. And it gives us a lot of hope that something is possible. Clean technologies are the future. And I think it's the most inspiring project since the flight to the moon. But with solar energy, renewable energy, with a lot of efficiency, that's what we need to prove. It is possible to make a change. So have a safe flight back to Europe, to your home country, Switzerland. We are proud of you.
Thank you, Doris. Thank you. And you know, they were astronauts going to the moon, and today they are heads of states making a better world. This is the message. Better quality of life. This is the new adventure of the 21st century. And we need heads of states who make the legal framework to reach the goal. Congratulations for what you're doing, and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are not satisfied just to make history today with the number of signatures. We want to push the boundaries of our limits in every sense. So we thank Mr. Piccard and the Secretary General and Dr. Lee for kicking us off, as well as the President of the General Assembly.
Thank you very much, and you made it work. Huh? They had the picture also on the big screen. In addition to the voice, they also have the cockpit.
Yes, we had all the pictures of the UN and of you next to each other, and it was just amazing to see your inspiration and also technology to make this work.
Congratulations, NCC. Thank you. That was probably the most important speech of my life, and you made it happen. Thank you.
I'm glad we know that afterwards.
Thanks a lot.
We knew that before.
Good cooperation between media and engineers.
Yes, yes.
Okay, I don't want to make a too harsh break, but the next interview is scheduled for 20 Solo, and as far as I know, it's still valid. And we would like to start the climb before, as we were low all the time, and we might now want to intercept the mission climb.
Okay,